I was with my ex-husband at the mall, buying clothes for our child. His current wife kept calling him non-stop. My ex-husband had no choice but to lie, saying he was in a meeting at the office. But the background noise from the mall betrayed him. The woman on the other end grew even more hysterical, relentless. His face was full of disgust and impatience, yet he had to force himself to coax her patiently. I stood aside, watching coldly, secretly feeling immense satisfaction. Back then, he had been with that woman, and he treated me the same way. The suffering I endured, they are finally tasting it now. Chapter 01. A loyal man at 20. By 30 he had already changed his heart. Christian and I had been married for 5 years. Just 3 months ago, our daughter Vicky was born. By all appearances, life should have been blissful, but when Vicky had barely turned 1 month old, he asked me for a divorce. Christian and his lover sat in the living room, upright and bold, their fingers interlocked. Their faces showed the same unwavering determination. And me, I was the only obstacle standing in the way of this perfect couple rushing toward their happily ever after. We should divorce. Afraid I hadn't heard clearly, Christian calmly repeated himself. At that moment, our daughter lay crying in her crib in the master bedroom. Her diaper had only been half changed, and she was uncomfortable. Hearing Christian's proposal, I was stunned for a second, but the sound of my daughter crying pulled me back to reality. I no longer had the mood to deal with their shameless little drama. I just hurried to get a fresh diaper and return to my baby. But my movement triggered the insecurity in his lover's heart. Elena panicked. She had plotted for so long, only for this day, to force me aside. Now that everything was confessed, seeing me so indifferent drove her crazy. She suddenly rushed up and grabbed me. Miranda, I'm sorry, she cried and said. Just let go. This way. We're all suffering. Those words finally made me look at them properly. Christian's face was full of guilt and hesitation, his expression deeply conflicted. Our daughter was crying, but he stood there, watching his mistress block my way. Christian still didn't dare meet my eyes. When he noticed my gaze fixed straight on him, his eyes darted around, and he only said, Elena and I are true love. I looked at him. I didn't say a word. He had chased me for 3 years. On our wedding day, he cried in front of family and friends, swearing he would treat me well. We supported each other for 7 years, and our baby had just turned 1 month old. Now, he said they were the true love. So all these years with me, were they fake? Finally, I opened my mouth. I said to Elena, I'm not the one suffering. You are. You're the homewrecker. By law and by reason, I am his wife. Elena's expression twisted for a moment. She was shaken. Clearly, she cared a lot about the title, and everything that came with it. What else could she care about? True love? Moments ago, she had been tearfully begging, but now that I exposed her weak spot, she dropped the act. She yanked at me, gripping my arm so hard her sharp nails dug into my flesh. Miranda, you're still young. You'll have plenty of choices in the future. Why be so stubborn? Yes, you're so young, I sneered. With all those choices, why pick being a mistress, a woman in the shadows? Elena was caught off guard, her mask ripped away. She shrieked, crying again, and that was when Christian couldn't bear it anymore. He shoved me aside. I had already been held tightly by Elena, caught off guard by his push. I stumbled backward, lost my balance, and fell to the ground. Suddenly, the whole world felt absurd. I had just come out of postpartum confinement, hadn't even returned to work. My body still weak, and my husband knocked me down to the floor. Meanwhile, our daughter was in the master bedroom, crying loudly. Her tiny cries seeped through the half-open bedroom door, echoing in broken sobs. My husband, her father, stood there like a triumphant hero, like he had done something remarkable, courageously fighting off evil, protecting the woman he claimed to love. He stood proud, as though towering over the world. Hearing my daughter's cries from the bedroom, I gritted my teeth and said word by word, Fine, then let's divorce. Chapter 02. Christian is 31 this year, the same age as me. Compared to many of our peers, we had children relatively late. We were campus sweethearts, married right after graduation. 10 years of love had passed, and this year Christian found his so-called true love. Truly, the world is ironic. Our divorce was simple. The property was easy to divide. Our jobs had no overlap. No debts to sort out. But then came the issue of child custody. Christian's intention was clear. He believed our daughter Vicky should belong to him. He was in his 30s. And this was his first child. Giving up property was easy for him. But the child, he couldn't let go. And I wasn't willing to either. Christian was still young. Now that he was tangled with Elena, children would surely come again in his future. When that day came, what would happen to my daughter? My marriage was already ruined, but I would never let my daughter's life be ruined too. But Vicky was only 3 months old, still breastfeeding. Her custody was obvious. Even lawyer friends advised Christian not to waste time fighting for it. Otherwise, with the divorce cooling off period added, things would drag on endlessly. Christian remained unconvinced and frustrated. But Elena's urging was relentless. She was too eager, watching closely for us to separate so she could take her place. In the end, Christian had no choice but to agree, but to preserve his visitation rights. And perhaps out of some lingering guilt, he made many concessions on the financial side. This, however, fueled Elena's dissatisfaction. They even had a little quarrel about it. When word of this reached me, I felt calm. I had known Christian for so many years. I understood exactly what kind of man he was. His insistence on custody wasn't out of deep fatherly love, it was so the world would believe our marriage ended naturally, that he was still a responsible father to his child. He still wanted to be seen as a good man. After all, we had been together for many years. Our social circles heavily overlapped. He still needed to maintain his reputation. So even if it caused friction with Elena, he had to play that role. I only sneered and said, "Visitation is fine, but child support must not be lacking. You'll cover all educational expenses until our daughter turns 18. Christian agreed without hesitation. The demand was reasonable. He didn't want to be accused of neglecting his own flesh and blood. But this crossed Elena's bottom line. For once, she tore apart her obedient, sweet public persona when the lawyer wasn't around. She lost her temper with Christian and me. Elena snapped, "Miranda, you earn a good salary too. Why should Christian pay so much? Christian and I will also have a family and children in the future. Why should we pay for your child's tuition?" In this battle of love, she had already won. I had been defeated step by step, so her arrogance as the victor was only natural. Christian tugged her arm but didn't stop her aggressive attack. I said calmly, "Even if Christian and I separate, we are still Vicky's biological parents. Since that's the case, we must take responsibility. This is the law. If you're unhappy, I can't help it. You can also refuse to pay." I looked at Christian and added, "I'll file the paperwork in court and apply for a fair ruling. If the court decides you don't have to pay child support, then I won't say another word." Christian's face darkened with embarrassment. He had been walking a smooth road these past few years. Now he was already an executive at a publicly listed company. A man needs his face, just as a tree needs its bark, with an annual salary in the millions. If his ex-wife sued him for refusing to pay child support, who could afford such disgrace? How would he hold his place in the social circle afterward? At that moment, he yanked Elena back, forcing her down into the chair. His face turned cold, his tone icy. "Stop making trouble." This was probably the first time he had ever spoken to Elena that way. She stared at him in disbelief. It wasn't the money she truly cared about. What she cared about was the existence of Vicky. It was precisely because of this child that she had pushed so hard, forcing Christian to divorce me, even discarding all pretense of dignity, storming in while I was still in postpartum recovery, forcing a showdown. I could give birth. Elena was young. She could give birth too. But she couldn't keep wasting her youth like this, forever playing the role of a mistress, despised by others. What's more, after this whole affair broke out, she even lost her job. In our company, I outranked Elena. I had been her boss. Any subordinate who stabbed her leader's family in the back could find no place anywhere. With her job gone, she had no choice but to secure the title of Mrs. Law. When she saw me signing the divorce agreement, Elena had no option but to swallow her dissatisfaction. After all, she had gotten what she wanted. As for the rest, giving up a little more didn't matter. Once the division of property and custody had been finalized, we signed the divorce agreement. We filed the first round at the bureau. only needing to return after the 3-month cooling-off period to collect the divorce certificate. Walking out of the bureau, I suddenly turned back to look at Christian. Elena, seeing this, immediately clutched his arm with heightened wariness. "Could you give me a little more time?" My tone was humble, almost pleading. "The baby is too young. There are so many things at home. My maternity leave is almost over. I need to return to work. It'll take some time before I can move everything out." The place we were living in now was our marital home, a flat of 150 square meters. It was awarded to Christian in the divorce, so I had to move out. This reason was impossible to refuse. Christian didn't hesitate, agreeing instantly, not even sparing a glance at Elena's expression. After all, I was just a single mother with an infant. So many belongings. Such a large apartment, moving out was no easy task. He tried to reassure me, of course. "Don't worry, there's no rush." It was impossible for him not to feel some guilt, some hesitation, whether it was to soothe his conscience or to showcase himself as a decent man. Christian even added deliberately, "Stay as long as you need. Move out whenever you want. And if you need anything, you must tell me." I looked at him with feigned gratitude, but I knew very well that in the property split, he had also received a small apartment. That place would surely become his and Elena's little love nest. Elena's face grew ugly. Still, she forced a smile and said to me, "That's only right. If you need any help, you must tell us. I know a moving company, very reliable. I can book them for you. They'll come straight to your door and pack everything, super quick. And besides, you've already been given a smaller apartment. Living in such a big place with just the two of you, it's too empty, too quiet." Her goal was obvious to anyone with eyes. She just wanted me gone. "Vicky is too little. Moving isn't like it is for adults, packing up and leaving all at once. The weather is turning colder. Babies fall sick easily." I put on a pleading look. "Please, give me more time." The lawyer, a mutual friend, looked on with a subtle expression. And Christian, seeing this, lost his composure. "She can stay as long as she wants. You don't get to order her around." Elena had wanted to continue speaking, but his sharp rebuke silenced her. She could only swallow her anger. She forced a stiff smile. "I was only thinking of your best interests. Watching them." I said nothing. This wasn't something born in a day or two, and my heart hadn't died today either. When, exactly, had our marriage begun to break? Chapter 03. Christian and I were high school classmates. In our freshman year of college, we confirmed our relationship. From that moment on, our life together began. Two young people with nothing in their hands leaned on each other in a strange city, fighting battles side by side, leveling up together like in a game, cheering each other on all the way. And finally, we reached today. We had a car, a house, and successful careers. But our family was no longer whole. The journey had been so long. I don't know when it started, but our marriage was no longer happy, no longer reliable. Our love had developed a blank space big enough for someone else to step in. When we were young, we loved each other deeply, believing we would grow old together. But now, at this point, standing on our own as adults, we found each other strangers. Back then, with every little quarrel we acted like star-crossed lovers. Now, in dividing assets during divorce, we were calm, steady, and collected, without the slightest temper. Outside, a light rain began to fall, pattering softly. I took an umbrella from my bag, ready to walk away. In the end, Christian called after me, "Don't blame her." At the final moment of our marriage, he stopped me, yet couldn't meet my eyes. His gaze shifted aside, fixed only on the water stains on the floor. "Blame me. Don't blame her." I paused for a moment, but without turning back, I opened my umbrella and walked on. I even laughed as I heard it, walking through the drizzle under my umbrella. My laughter turned into tears. Such tenderness, it could move anyone's heart. I stared blankly at the raindrops sliding off the umbrella's edge. My fingers clenched tight around the handle, but I wasn't touched by their so-called true love. He truly had wronged me, because in today's divorce agreement, Christian told me that he and Elena had gotten together in July, 2 years ago. And at that time, we had just lost our first child. Our bodies had always been healthy, but when it came to children, Fate seemed to hold us at arm's length. We had been trying for a year and a half without success. My mother grew so anxious she turned to temples and prayers, while my mother-in-law brought home some folk remedy she had found, burning talisman paper to ashes and making me drink it mixed in water. I had a bachelor's and master's degree in biopharmaceuticals. How could I believe in such things? The water was bitter and disgusting, yet his mother pried my mouth open and forced it down my throat. Because of this, we had a full-blown family war. Christian was caught between both sides, suffering in silence, trying to please us all. In the end, he finally managed to coax us into a fragile truce. He booked a high-end restaurant, gathering both families together. We had a lively dinner, pretending nothing had happened, pretending we were still one family. That day, I don't know what I ate, but I felt nauseous, gagging constantly, until I finally rushed to the bathroom to throw up. Christian worried I had food poisoning and wanted to raise a fuss with the restaurant. But my mother and mother-in-law, as women who had been through it, were suddenly overjoyed. Yes, that's right, I was pregnant. But at that time, it was exactly when my career was about to take a big step forward. The pharmaceutical company system was massive, with complex networks and relationships. I had no background, no family connections, just myself, struggling and fighting alone for years. It hadn't been easy. Christian strongly urged me to give up the promotion opportunity, to tell the company about my pregnancy, to reduce my workload as much as possible. But that wasn't who I was. I was stubborn, unwilling to fall behind anyone. So, after an agonizing inner struggle, I told Christian I would give it up, but I concealed the pregnancy from the company. I threw myself completely, recklessly, into the battle for promotion, working day and night on reports, materials, and client competitions. During that period, I worked overtime every single day. Although Christian sensed something was wrong, he was away on business trips, out of town, powerless to intervene. Meanwhile, his mother had strong objections to me. Every morning when I woke up, it seemed another quarrel was waiting. Christian's mother was a very traditional rural woman. In her eyes, a woman reaching 28 without giving birth, still chasing a career that was nothing short of monstrous. She truly meant well toward me, but she couldn't accept the idea of her daughter-in-law being a monster. So, she pressured her son relentlessly, urging him to change my mind. But since Christian was always away, he couldn't help at all. The pressure at work, the tension at home, Christian was stuck between us, utterly exhausted and torn apart. But I was determined. With my belly growing, I fought fiercely in the workplace. Pregnancy, sickness, rivals, difficult clients, I cut them all down. And then, disaster struck in a single moment. On the very day I received my promotion notice, the company held a celebration banquet for me. As everyone was leaving, someone had spilled water near the doorway. I stepped on it, slipped, and fell. The baby was gone. For us, it was like a thunderbolt from a clear sky. The company, terrified of liability, granted me extended paid leave to recover, agreeing to anything I asked. But I lay bedridden, weeping endlessly. My mother-in-law had a heart attack and was hospitalized. After being resuscitated, the very first thing she did was storm into my ward, slap me across the face, and scream that I had killed her family's eldest grandson. My mother had been sitting beside me, crying quietly, but when she saw my mother-in-law lash out at me like that, she lost all restraint and cursed her back without mercy. It was in that moment that Christian finally returned from his long business trip. What greeted him at home was chaos, me unconscious under anesthesia in the hospital bed, and our two mothers, both bruised and battered from fighting. At that time, his own work pressure was overwhelming. His job required constant business trips. He was practically a man living on airplanes. The double weight of body and spirit crushed him. Exhausted, he found himself unwilling to go straight home after work. Instead, he sat in the car smoking, delaying the moment. It was probably then that Elena, who came from the company to deliver documents to me, noticed him, knocked on his car window, and also knocked open the door to his heart. The loss of that child shattered the harmony in our marriage and destroyed the peace in our family. My mother-in-law, furious, returned to the countryside. She only came back when I became pregnant again this year, abandoning her grudges, rushing eagerly to care for me. This time, with a stable position and higher authority at work. I could work from home, bedridden to protect the pregnancy. Deep down, I knew that the old tragedy had planted cracks between me and Christian, but now, finally, everything seemed whole again. Although belated, it still felt perfect. Yet during the pregnancy, things didn't go smoothly. Because of hormones, my temper became volatile and sharp, but Christian always held me, whispering gently that I shouldn't worry about anything. He only wished for me and our daughter to be safe and sound. At the time, I was deeply moved. I thought I had found a rare, one-in-a-million good man, until, after my confinement month had ended, he asked me for a divorce. Chapter 04. Perhaps out of guilt toward me. During the divorce, Christian answered whatever I asked. Christian said he noticed Elena because she seemed pitiful. He wanted to protect her. Elena is actually a good girl. Christian said she's still unmarried because her previous boyfriend wasted her youth. He continued, she was with that boyfriend from her student days all the way until last year. He never married her. After checking, she found out he was already married. For all those years, she had unknowingly been the mistress. When he said this, Christian was deeply moved. Holding Elena's hand, he said, so I really feel for her. I want to protect her properly. I didn't respond, only stared silently at Elena. The Elena whose hand he held grew visibly flustered, her expression tight, her eyes darting nervously toward me, afraid I would expose her secrets. Yes, Elena's story wasn't false. She truly had been with a so-called boyfriend, nameless and without status, from college until now. That boyfriend was the deputy general manager of our company. It was he who introduced Elena into the company, who secured her a cushy job, high pay, light workload, close to home. She had been a mistress openly and knowingly, not some innocent, deceived girl who had been tricked into being a mistress. And recently, the deputy GM had contacted HR and had Elena fired outright, without compensation. At the time, I even felt indignant on her behalf, but Elena didn't protest a word. She packed her things and left. Looking back now, with today's divorce in mind, it was obvious, by then, the deputy GM had discovered Elena and Christian were entangled, and he was furious. It was fine for him to cheat on his wife, but for his mistress to cheat on him? That was intolerable, so he immediately kicked Elena out of the company. Any wife in my position would have exploded, would have told Christian exactly what kind of woman he was holding on to. But I sat there, motionless, and without a word signed the divorce agreement, because I was consumed by hatred. My heart brimmed with resentment. Christian and Elena, they hadn't only destroyed me, they had also destroyed my daughter's family. I should have had a steady, beautiful life, but the two of them conspired to ruin it. I would not forgive them. I would torment them slowly. In return, Chapter 05. What Christian never expected was that, after the divorce, I, the person most involved, remained very calm. But his parents were the ones who erupted. This child was not only the one I suffered to bring into the world, but also the one Christian's mother had anxiously watched over, day and night, waiting for with all her strength and prayers. Now, hearing that Christian had divorced me and that custody had gone to me, she was the first to explode. At the time, Christian's father had injured his back in the countryside, and his mother had gone back to care for him. When she left, she looked at Vicky with such reluctance, turning back again and again. But by the time she returned, Vicky was no longer counted as part of the Law family. Her son had kicked his wife and child out of the house. A granddaughter, gone. Just like that. This led to the grandmother dragging her husband with the injured back onto a night bus to come storming in. As soon as she entered the door, she lunged at Elena, yanking her hair and beating her. You shameless vixen. Where are you planning to drive my granddaughter off to? You homewrecker. You deserve 1,000 cuts. The old woman wept bitterly. Such a tiny baby, how could you be so heartless? Christian stood there awkwardly, trying to separate them, trying to soothe his parents. His father, with his back injured, still wanted to beat him, but could only take off a slipper and hurl it at him. You must be out of your damn mind. Christian dodged. The slipper struck Elena instead, making her shriek. Christian could only stammer, I really don't have any feelings left for Miranda. And what about the child? His mother cut straight to the point. We still have feelings for the child. Why don't you go ahead and kick us old folks out too? Christian had no words. All he could do was hastily declare, I am still Vicky's father. I will definitely be responsible for her in the future. What kind of responsibility is that? The family is already gone. His parents' reaction was so fierce it caught Christian completely off guard. Elena's hair was a tangled mess. Her face streaked with tears as she hid behind Christian. But now Christian himself was overwhelmed, flustered, unable to protect her. After all, things had already reached this point. The damage was done. In the middle of the fight, Vicky suddenly began wailing loudly. She was hungry, she needed milk. At the sound of her cry, her grandmother immediately perked up. Ears alert, panicked. She cried out, "Oh, baby, don't cry." I held Vicky, soothing her gently, then placed her into Christian's arms. Hold her for a while. I'll go to the kitchen with Mom to make the milk. It was such a proper reason that no one could refuse. With the baby already handed over, Christian instinctively opened his arms and held her tightly. Vicky's little face was red from crying. Gasping for breath, Christian could only hold her carefully, rocking her gently, coaxing her, "There, baby, don't cry. Daddy's here." Seeing someone close, Vicky's little temper subsided. She whimpered a few times, then grabbed Christian's finger and started smiling. Her tiny hand clutched the adult finger, melting Christian's heart. Without thinking, he sat down on the sofa holding her. "I think this baby really looks like me, Dad. Come take a look." Hearing this, Christian's father walked over too, with the family gathering around happily. Elena suddenly had no place, her face filled with embarrassment. She couldn't fit in. She tried to join in, reaching out to tease the baby, copying Christian, extending her finger toward Vicky's tiny hand. But Elena's brand new manicure was too sharp, too pointed. She accidentally poked Vicky's cheek. At once, Vicky burst into tears again. "What are you doing?" Christian had just managed to calm the baby after much effort. Seeing her startled and jabbed again, his face darkened with anger. Elena shrank back, sullen and guilty. At that moment, the milk formula was finally ready. I took the baby into my arms and fed her. Soft and sweet, the little one left Christian's embrace, leaving him with a sense of emptiness. He still wanted to hold her again once she finished drinking her milk. But by then, Elena could no longer bear staying. It was late, and she yawned several times. "Let's go," she said, acting coquettish. "Let's head back. With so many people here, it's hard for the baby to rest." Her words weren't wrong. Too many people around, and the child couldn't fall asleep. Christian's apartment was a small one-bedroom, enough for him and Elena. With his parents' sudden arrival, he hadn't prepared. He was about to take them to stay in a hotel, but his mother clutched Vicky tightly, refusing to let go. Christian pleaded with her for a long time, but it wasn't until I stepped in, suggesting that she could stay in a nearby hotel and come back the next day to help me with Vicky, that she reluctantly agreed. When she left, she was filled with worry, kept looking back with every step. She told me, "You're just a woman alone with a child. If anything happens, you must call us." I nodded. Yes, I would definitely call. They had destroyed my life. How could I possibly let them live theirs peacefully? Chapter 06. Christian's parents stayed at a hotel right outside our neighborhood gate. I had suggested hiring a nanny, but my mother-in-law didn't trust the idea. So every day, they came to my apartment to check on Vicky, cook meals, and help with chores. Christian, too, was called over daily by his mother for dinner, to spend time with Vicky before going home at night. During this period, Elena, jobless, could only sit at home waiting for him, but Christian came back later and later each time. She was furious. After all, she had told Christian that as long as she had him, she didn't need anything else. Then she lost her job, and Christian, feeling deeply guilty, agreed to divorce me. She must not have understood why. Despite the divorce, Christian remained tied to me and to this child. But she knew his temperament well, that he yielded to gentleness but not force. So lately, she hadn't dared to confront me directly. One night, I called Christian. "Vicky has a fever," I said urgently. "Christian, My car is in the shop. Can you come drive us to the hospital? They had probably just gone to bed. On his side, Elena's angry voice asked who it was. My parents are frantic. Vicky's bigger now. There's more stuff to carry, and we really can't manage alone. On the phone, I sounded close to tears. Did I wake you? I didn't mean to disturb you, please. I'm begging you. Those words broke Christian's heart. What happened? At dinner this afternoon she seemed fine. Without hesitation, he said, pack up the baby's things. Tell mom and dad not to worry. I'm coming right now. I wasn't lying. Vicky really did have a fever. She was feverish and vomiting at the same time. We were at a loss. Panicked. But I was an adult. Handling this was fully within my ability, even without anyone's help. I could have taken her to the hospital myself. But Vicky was Christian's biological daughter, too. With this kind of labor force available, why not use it? Seeing their granddaughter's eyes shut tight, vomiting non-stop, Christian's parents nearly lost their minds. Calling him frantically, Christian rushed over in his car. In a household of only women, children, and the elderly, at this moment he had no choice but to act as the pillar of the family. He dashed back and forth, driving us to the hospital, registering at pediatric emergency, opening medical records, finding doctors, and taking his daughter for tests. Vicky's blood work showed abnormal white cells. The doctor suspected pneumonia and ordered an X-ray. It was far too late by then. Christian sent his parents home by taxi to rest. He stayed with me and Vicky for the X-ray, then sat with us in the overcrowded children's hospital. By then, Vicky had been given an anti-nausea injection and finally stopped vomiting. She held tightly to Christian's finger as she slept, but her tiny brow was still tightly furrowed. Christian carefully smoothed her brow with his finger and smiled at me. This child has thick eyebrows. That means she'll have good fortune. Then he whispered to me, our Vicky is much prettier than that kid over there. I couldn't help but laugh through my tears. Just earlier, when he saw other children screaming during injections, he only found them annoying. But when Vicky cried as the needle pierced her skin, it was as if a hand had twisted his heart. He wished the shot had been given to him instead. Begging the nurse again and again to be gentle, the doctor said, there's nothing else wrong with the child, but there's a shadow on the lung. If you have the means, it would be best to do more precise testing. No parent wants to hear those words. Christian nearly lost his mind, his face filled with panic. Then what should we do? My personal suggestion is that you take her to a provincial hospital and register with a specialist. The doctor said, the medical conditions there are better, the results more accurate. When it comes to a child, you can't afford to be careless. But if you're worried about the trouble, we're not afraid of trouble. Christian cut him off quickly, blurting out, tell us which department to see. I have a classmate working in the provincial hospital. I'll contact him tonight to transfer her. Parents always panic when their child is sick. So for the doctor, this scene was nothing unusual. What he didn't know was that the seemingly ordinary couple had already divorced. By then, it was very late. Vicky could have been admitted, but Christian thought the children's hospital was too crowded, too chaotic. Recently he had read news about child traffickers, and he couldn't rest easy, so he drove Vicky and me home instead. When we arrived, it was already deep into the night. Out of habit, he took off his shoes and coat, ready to step into the bedroom to sleep. Only then did he remember he was already divorced from me. The coat in his hand stilled midair. In the end, he left. As he went, Christian kept turning back with every step, unease written all over him. He urged me over and over, if Vicky still has a fever in the second half of the night, call me. You must call me. Promise me. Chapter 07. Anyone who has had a child fall ill knows how long and exhausting the ordeal can be, and that was exactly my case. I shamelessly directed Christian to run back and forth for Vicky, whether out of his responsibility as a father, or because his parents were pressing him with knives at his back. Christian did it all, and even seemed to take it willingly. Men are like this. When a child is first born and unfamiliar, barely seen, they can discard marriage as if it were nothing. But once they join in the raising, holding that child, watching her grow day by day, suddenly, feelings for another woman seem far less important. Specialist appointments at hospitals were extremely hard to get. Pulling strings took time, and Vicky's condition was unstable. Countless nights, When my calls woke Christian, he didn't hesitate to dress, drive, and rush Vicky to the hospital for exams and injections. That shadow on her lung became his own heart's shadow. He chased down every connection, begged in every direction, spending heavily just to secure a famous professor to examine Vicky and to pay for the most advanced tests. Through all this effort and time spent together, Vicky became like a piece of his own flesh, and it was because of this that he suddenly realized just how much he owed her. Yes, when Vicky grew older, when she went to school, how would she see him? Would her classmates mock her? And if I remarried, she might have a stepfather. She might call another man daddy. But now, with so many news reports about stepfathers abusing or mistreating stepdaughters, how could he guarantee the man I remarried would be good and kind? Christian had a colleague, a department head. That colleague had separated from his wife over marital issues, and their child had been bullied at school because of it, beaten so badly he suffered a concussion. Christian saw with his own eyes how that man, usually calm and collected, came rushing frantically into the hospital, completely undone, and that was with a son. What if Vicky faced the same fate? She was only a little girl. How could she endure it? Would she be bullied because her parents were divorced? For the first time, Christian looked at Vicky and began to wonder if his decision to divorce had been far too hasty. Even if divorce was inevitable, why not wait until Vicky was old enough to understand, and then carefully teach her that her parents had separated because of love lost? Of course, that required time. But if Elena could trail after her previous boyfriend for so many years without a title, why couldn't she do the same for him? Christian? He wouldn't treat her poorly. Even now, with Elena unemployed and waiting at home, Christian felt deeply guilty toward her. She told him she had lost her job because of him, that the company had considered my feelings and dismissed her. Hearing that, Christian didn't hesitate to give her a supplementary credit card, telling her to spend as she pleased. Wasn't that enough? And then there was Vicky, so small, so pitiful. These thoughts plagued Christian constantly, binding him like ropes. But Elena didn't see it that way. She couldn't accept that her bright future had been completely ruined by a child. Back when she had followed the deputy GM as his mistress, at least she had a job, benefits, and money spent freely on her. And during those years, no one dared speak against her. But now, after following Christian for love, after truly becoming a homewrecker, everyone could point at her nose and curse, sneer at her, call her a shameless vixen. Because of Christian, she had lost her patron and her job. Her reputation was in ruins, and all she had gained in return was a supplementary credit card. She had thrown away her benefactor and her career for him. Chapter 08. That day, Elena came chasing to the hospital. On my way back from fetching water, as I passed the stairwell, I heard them quarreling. She screamed. Back when we first got together, she was already pregnant. You should have taken her to abort that child. This child being sick now, so weak and frail, it proves she should never have been born. She's a jinx. Those words ignited Christian's fury like thunder. These past days, he had shamelessly begged classmates and friends, just to secure a consultation slot with a senior professor in the provincial capital for Vicky. And now, the woman before him dared say his daughter should not even be alive. In that moment, every last shred of tenderness he had for Elena vanished. He roared in anger and shoved her. You're the one who tore her family apart. And now you curse her. I already owe her more than enough. Don't you have any shame? His words landed like a slap across Elena's face. In the reflection on the glass, she sat on the stair steps, trembling with rage. Elena broke down completely. But suddenly, she clutched her belly and began rolling on the floor in pain. Her body curled up, shaking like a shrimp. At first, Christian thought she was faking, putting on another act, and ignored her. But when he saw her face go deathly pale, he realized something was truly wrong. I stepped back into the corner and watched as he scooped Elena into his arms and ran frantically. The doctor said it was a threatened miscarriage. Those words struck Christian like lightning to the head. He was going to be a father again. Elena lay in the hospital bed, stroking her abdomen. Who knows what she was thinking, but on her lips appeared a triumphant smile. The wheel of fortune had turned. Now she was pregnant too, with a bitter satisfaction. She thought, this time, Christian will finally stop being bewitched by Vicky. And because of this child, Christian's parents at last began showing Elena a kinder face. After all, no matter who gave birth, it would still be a grandchild of the Law family. What grandparents don't wish for their family tree to flourish? But Elena didn't know, her retribution had only just begun. Chapter 09. As the year drew to a close, I became extremely busy with work. It was only then that I finally, slowly, moved out of the large apartment. Christian moved in with his parents and Elena. After explaining my work situation, I simply sent Vicky to stay temporarily at Christian's place. Christian's parents were overjoyed. They treasured Vicky like a precious jewel, careful not to let me think they were biased or mistreating her, lest I never let them see their granddaughter again. Christian had no objection either. He knew I was busy with work, and compared to sending the child to daycare or leaving her with an unknown nanny, his parents were by far the most trustworthy. So, in his view, this arrangement was welcome, but Vicky was still very young, spoiled and easily prone to tears. Elena, on the other hand, was unemployed. After becoming pregnant, she was unwell, needing bed rest just as I once did. Having a little child crying constantly made it even harder for her to rest, eat, or sleep. She was practically driven to the brink of a nervous breakdown, so she often lost her temper with Vicky. Christian and his parents saw all of this. Though Elena carried a child in her womb, Vicky was the little treasure they had personally cared for all these days. So Christian's parents sided with Vicky without hesitation. Even when Christian stepped in to mediate, he couldn't help but lean toward his daughter's side. This only deepened Elena's resentment, filling her with endless complaints. Eventually, she completely lost control of her attitude. She even called me, demanding that I take the child back immediately. Her aggressive tone directly enraged Christian's parents. They already disliked this woman who had destroyed their son's family. Now, seeing her bully a single mother and child who had already been cast out of the marriage, they found her heart truly vile. At this point, Elena was no longer Christian's emotional refuge. She had become the instigator of constant wars. The household was filled with tension at every moment. Elena quarreled with Christian's parents, who in turn blamed their son. Christian was forced to step in, his head aching, to smooth things over. But Elena only grew more forceful, driving Christian to anger as well. In the end, he had no choice but to ask me when my work would end so he could return Vicky to me. Chapter 10. When I received that call, I didn't respond immediately. I'll speak to my manager tomorrow and delay these projects, I said softly. You know, my brother just had a baby too, so my mom went to help him. Before, I hired a nanny, but she slacked off when I wasn't watching. She even gave Vicky cold water to drink. Such a tiny child, given cold water. Christian's heart shattered, and my situation sounded utterly pitiful. He was too embarrassed to bring up the subject again, so he quickly changed to another topic. But I had already sensed that my daughter's situation in their home wasn't good. So the next day, I went over, prepared to take her back. Christian's parents panicked. They feared leaving me with the impression that their family mistreated Vicky, and they urgently pushed Christian to explain everything to me. But I didn't go alone to pick up my child. After all, she had many belongings. So I asked a male colleague to come with me. The moment this colleague entered Christian's home and saw Elena throwing a tantrum, he couldn't help but raise his brows. Elena was disheveled, swollen all over. Because of pregnancy hormones, she had gained a lot of weight. Her hair had once been dyed a seductive wine red, but since pregnancy prevented her from touching up, her dark roots had grown out, leaving her looking rough and unkempt. She wore baggy loungewear and cheap plastic slippers, standing in the living room fuming. At first, Elena didn't notice the man behind me, but when she finally saw him clearly, panic swept across her face. How did you become like this? Our deputy GM looked at Elena, genuinely shocked, but over her cheating, he still held deep resentment, so he deliberately turned to Christian and said, when she was pregnant for me, she didn't end up like this. Chapter 11. Those words exploded in the Law household like a bomb. Everyone was stunned. Christian lunged forward, grabbing the man by the collar, slamming him against the wall. What do you mean by that? The man raised both hands, pressed against the wall, feigning innocence. She used to be my mistress. Back when you two got together, I was still supporting her. Didn't you know? You're the one who made me the victim of cheating. Why are you angry? The man spoke leisurely. She had 2, maybe 3 abortions while with me. I suppose I wronged her. But now she's with you, someone else to take over the burden. That's not a bad ending. I should be happy. His eyes flicked meaningfully over me and Vicky. It's just a pity for your child. Those words were another bomb, blasting away Christian's reason. I wasn't that cruel with her. Every time. I accompanied her, and we bought the most expensive abortion packages. But still, he deliberately cut himself off. With that kind of history, didn't the doctor warn you this pregnancy might not go well? Elena completely panicked. She rushed forward, wanting to shove the man away. But the look in Christian's eyes made her shiver with dread. But what had she done wrong? This man had indeed been her patron. She had followed him since college. He was the only man she had ever been with. She had been clean. Yes, she had aborted a few times for him, but he had watched her pregnant and still refused to marry her, even forcing her into abortions. It was clear he had only been toying with her. She didn't want to spend her life as someone's plaything. She longed for a normal family, to be the wife of a high executive. That was why she had clung to Christian. What was her crime? But Christian only forced out words between clenched teeth. We'll discuss this later. The chill of those words froze her to the bone. Chapter 12. Of course, that male colleague was someone I had deliberately called over. Strictly speaking, he wasn't just a colleague, he was the deputy GM. Because of a recent project, we had quite a bit of interaction. Before coming, he didn't know what had happened, but the moment he saw Elena, he instantly understood my intention. And being a gentleman, since he was already there, he truly helped me pack things up. So, he said casually, folding up the rocking chair and putting it in the trunk of my car, you still want to give your child a complete family? His words earned him a strange look from me, unsure of my meaning. He added, didn't you ask me here to let your husband see that woman's past, so the 2 of them would split up, and your family would be whole again? First of all, he's my ex-husband. I lifted my phone, showing him a photo of the divorce certificate. This morning, the cooling-off period ended. I called Christian and had him come finalize it. I told him I'd be traveling tomorrow, so we had to get it done today. He thought Elena was pregnant, so he came. Second, the reason I asked you here today was also out of kindness. Since they're living together, they should be honest with each other. That made him laugh. You're really good at pretending. At last, I said calmly, even if I had to beg on the streets, I would never remarry him. I'm not in the business of picking up garbage. The man couldn't help but ask. Then why? I looked at him. Boss, if you're bored, review the project plan. I'm your subordinate. Don't meddle in my private matters. He rubbed his nose and muttered, humph, using me and tossing me aside. What kind of person are you? Chapter 13. The days grew colder and colder. After some discussion, my mother and sister-in-law decided to come and help me take care of the child. The new year was approaching, and Elena's belly grew larger by the day. But Christian showed no intention whatsoever of registering for a marriage certificate with her. This only made Elena more manic. Christian was waiting. After that incident with her former patron's visit, he took Elena to see a doctor. This time, he confirmed everything about her past. Elena had indeed undergone 3 termination of pregnancy procedures, abortions. In other words, and that was why this current pregnancy was so difficult. Christian was enraged. He had never imagined that the so-called true love he abandoned his wife and child for was actually someone else's mistress. Her past was sordid, utterly different from the story Elena had told him. So Christian asked the doctor about performing an amniocentesis for DNA testing. He suspected the child wasn't his. The doctor advised waiting until the pregnancy was more stable in the 2nd trimester. And so Christian refused to marry Elena. He would wait for the DNA results before setting aside his doubts. Once my mother arrived, Christian's parents felt too embarrassed to visit me openly anymore. But they still worried about Vicky, so they constantly urged their son to visit, to take photos and videos to bring back to them. Vicky was growing taller and sturdier every day. Christian watched her with love in his heart, and even volunteered to buy her new clothes. Chapter 14. As the new year approached, the mall was packed with people. Christian held Vicky carefully in his arms, terrified that someone might bump into her. After dinner, His current fiancée, heavily pregnant Elena, kept calling him desperately. She called again and again, demanding when he would come home. When I heard Christian, impatient, telling her he was still working late at the office, I nearly lost control. I almost burst out laughing. It was absurd. Such a familiar scene. The wheel of fortune turns. This upscale local mall's children's clothing was quite expensive. Christian walked with us as we browsed, constantly holding up clothes against Vicky, as if he wanted to buy everything for her. The saleswoman's smile bloomed like a flower as she eagerly recommended more, flattering Vicky as a snow-white little angel. Christian waved his hand grandly, telling them to wrap everything up and charge his card. Meanwhile, he ignored Elena's calls over and over again, cutting them off, but the ringing was relentless. Christian glanced helplessly at his phone and turned to explain, "What can I do? I just don't want to go home and listen to her nagging. This pregnancy hasn't been stable, and she has nothing to do all day," he said with a bitter smile. "Her temper's gotten worse. She quarrels with my mom every single day." Then he complained, "Back when you were pregnant, you weren't like that." "Yes. Why was it that when I was pregnant, I wasn't like that?" I smiled gently, soothing him, saying nothing, only showing softness and patience. But inside, my heart was ice cold. Back then, I was all goodness. And didn't he still abandon his wife and child to fly side by side in so-called love with her? What a joke of a life. I could see Christian's gaze toward me grow hotter and hotter. Meanwhile, Elena finally snapped. She had access to Christian's supplementary card, so she called the bank to check his spending. She discovered he was at this very mall. He had told her he was working late at the office. Yet here he was, buying children's clothes. He dared lie to her. Chapter 15. Blinded by rage, Elena jumped into a taxi and rushed to the mall. But as she entered, she accidentally knocked over someone else's child. The parents instantly grabbed her, refusing to let her leave, loudly scolding her. Elena's emotions and nerves had already been stretched to the breaking point. She erupted hysterically, making a huge scene, relying on her pregnant belly to thrash and shout without restraint. But the family wasn't weak either, and they clashed head-on with her. In the chaos, some child's ice cream fell to the floor while Elena and the woman shoved each other. She stepped on it, slipping and crashing to the ground. She landed flat on her back, limbs sprawled. Everyone nearby froze, horrified, because Elena clutched her belly, unable to stand, groaning in pain. When she raised her trembling hand from beneath her skirt, it was covered in blood. Panic erupted. People scattered, terrified of being implicated. The mall's security quickly called the police and emergency services. At last, Christian arrived. Hurrying to the scene, he dropped to one knee, gripping Elena's hand tightly as she screamed in pain and cursed wildly. But his face showed nothing but irritation and disgust. I cradled Vicky, rocking her gently in my arms, expression calm as stone. Watching this drama unfold before me, I felt not the slightest ripple in my heart. Chapter 16. Elena insisted that someone had pushed her, but such a clumsy lie could not withstand scrutiny. Once the police pulled the mall's surveillance footage, it clearly showed she had slipped on an ice cream and fallen on her own. And as for that ice cream, no one ever figured out which child had dropped it, so the result could only be ruled an accident. The bitter fruit of miscarriage was left for Elena and Christian to swallow alone. Because of this incident, Elena and Christian quarreled fiercely. But this time, Christian held back his anger, no longer indulging her tantrums. For Christian truly couldn't understand. He couldn't understand why Elena, heavily pregnant, still had to come looking for trouble, still had to fight with him. The doctor had made it perfectly clear she needed bed rest. His mother was already slaving away at home every day to care for her. His whole family had been tiptoeing around her. He even relieved her from work and gave her a supplementary card. So why did she insist on going to the mall? Why did she insist on making a scene? Vicky was his daughter. Was it wrong for him to buy clothes for his own child? And when she entered, why did she have to bump into someone else's kid? Why escalate into a fight, only to end up harming her own baby? Elena, on the other hand, couldn't understand either. She didn't know why Christian, this time, would rather side with complete strangers than stand by her. She was the victim. She was the one who had lost a child. The two of them fought furiously, smashing up the house. In the end, Christian was utterly exhausted. Standing amid the wreckage, he told Elena, "Let's break up." Elena couldn't believe it. She had already lost nearly everything. With only Christian left, she still clung desperately to the dream of becoming Mrs. Law. So she pleaded, softened, tried everything to win him back. But this time Christian gave no response. In the past, Elena had been his safe harbor. Now, she was the very source of his misery. Chapter 17. Meanwhile, Christian's attitude toward me grew better and better. He was filled with guilt toward me and Vicky. Under his parents' urging, he even rekindled the thought of remarrying. Yes, that was it. He told himself he had only been bewitched by Elena, which led him to such foolish behavior. He admitted he had been impulsive. But now he was awake. He believed he ought to give his child a complete family. Faced with Christian's renewed enthusiasm, I only smiled faintly. To me, life seemed absurd. Once upon a time, for the sake of his so-called true love, he had pushed me to the ground right after my confinement period. While our daughter wailed in the bedroom, he hadn't cared in the slightest, abandoning us without hesitation. And now, he thought a few words, a performance of repentance, was enough to restore everything as if nothing had happened. Tell me, how could the world possibly work like that? Just then, the company needed to appoint a project director to Europe. Without hesitation, I volunteered. I also arranged passports for my mother and Vicky. This project required long-term residence abroad, and all the senior executives brought their families. Finding the right candidate had been difficult. So when I stepped up, the company was overjoyed and immediately bought us our plane tickets. Chapter 18. Christian was still immersed in the happiness of soon regaining a complete family, so he couldn't wait to rip Elena off him. As if tearing away a shameful scar, the sweeter things had once been, the more ruthless he became now. As their fights grew more explosive, Elena stormed into Christian's company and smashed up his office. Plenty of acquaintances even posted jokes about it on their social media. Meanwhile, I quietly finished preparing for our departure, arranging everything and entrusting my brother to handle the sale of my house. Our flight was scheduled for tomorrow. I smiled as I watched Christian drive to the company gate to pick me up, holding a bouquet of roses. But moments later, Elena followed him there, and the two of them quarreled furiously at the company entrance, shouting, even coming to blows. I felt triumphant, as if breathing freely again. Chapter 19. Whatever choices one makes, one must also bear the consequences. The kind of person you fall in love with determines the kind of family you build. They had chosen each other, so now they had to endure each other. That's how life is. There is no such thing in this world as a broken mirror made whole again, only regrets. We once had a good beginning, but we never gave each other a proper farewell, and no one in this world will wait forever, silently, without resentment, for the other person to come back. There is no such thing as a prodigal truly turning back. So let it be. From now on, he will run toward his future, and I will go live my own life. Though many years ago, when we were still teenagers, we believed we could grow old together, side by side, supporting each other, traveling across mountains and rivers,